here enough. Thank you, Genevieve. Okay, and now I'm going to share screen. And one of you techno superstars need to figure this out because I'm having trouble with too many control panels. Okay, it's been a problem. Let me put this up here. I don't know what I think I can do this better, just like this. Okay, but the problem is this control panel right here is getting into my PowerPoint. It's really bothering me. Okay, all right, so we're gonna do 23. So with God's help here, when we leave here today, but sometime tonight I'll put that online so y'all can see it. If y'all want to go back and watch it. But I do like that idea because sometimes we may be in the moment and you don't write down and I answer a question, right? Or make a big deal about it. Okay. Now, hi everybody, we're gonna go for it now. Chapter 23, so we're on taping it. But I want to tell you another thing that happened this morning. So we got in here and that girl gets passed out in here, and then I got busy checking everybody's overload place. I didn't get to do what I would like to do this morning was to preview this. I did preview it yesterday or 2 days ago when I did the wrote the test questions. I mean, for y'all's forensic questions. So if I jump around a little bit, please bear with me. But I do feel a little bit better about this. I did have several graduate level classes on plants, but still, I'm not the best pronouncer of some of these crazy words. Okay, because obviously there's some people spoken some serious stuff, naming some of this stuff, right? All right. So, but anyway, I got some good questions over here. I kept moving that around. So let me put it over here when I'm on this side. So I'll look at it. So we'll make sure we answer the questions. Right? Make sure y'all know there's 23 on the back. Inside joke for somebody in class. Right? We gotta have fun, right? And I'll make fun of myself, so y'all gotta take a little bit off of me. Okay. So this is actually a really cool chapter, okay? And I think y'all gonna find some stuff y'all didn't know, okay? And I think y'all will too when y'all read when y'all watch the fungi chapter. So we're gonna talk about the features of land plants, how they have evolved, blah blah blah, all this good stuff. Let's get into it. Okay, so plants. This is our kingdom, one of the big kingdoms inside, right? Our domains, eukaryote domain, and these are all multicellular, photosynthetic eukaryotic organisms. Remember, eukaryote means they have all the bells and whistles in there. They have a true nucleus, and these are the guys that do photosynthesis. Okay, super cool group. And what we're going to see here today is some of my questions are kind of broad questions, so you kind of listen to the whole thing and then kind of write it out. You know what I'm saying? Or use your book, go back and find the answer. But I asked several broad questions here, right? I big trends. So as we do this, I want y'all to look at some of the trends, how the plants evolved once they got on land. Okay. And we're going to notice how their mode of reproduction changes, okay? And I know we talked a little bit about this on the fungi chapter, which y'all probably haven't watched yet, because some of you, I mean, I wouldn't have watched it, but yet, y'all might know it's on there because I've told y'all about it today. But we brought up this term called alteration generation. And so I'm going to hit on that again quite a bit today too. And that is how everybody's going to do what we do, okay? So we know what the human life cycle is, but these other plants, especially the protistas, and the fungi, they had some random stuff. And I think today I'm going to show you something that I did not get to college. And if I had known what some of the cool things I'm going to show y'all this morning, I might have been a botanist, okay? Because I did not know some of the stuff that I'm going to show y'all today, okay? So plants are thought to evolve from the freshwater green algae. We talked about that chlorophyll about 590 million years ago. Green algae contain chlorophyll, accessory pigments. They store excess carbohydrates and starch. Plants, they have cellulose as their cell wall. And cellulose is a sugar that we can't break down, right? And so this is why I need to go on a diet. And I don't care what diet you do. You can do the Billy Bob diet, the Atkins diet, the Weight Watchers, Jenny Craig, the Bubba diet. All diets say eat all the lettuce you want to eat, right? Eat all the lettuce you want to eat because lettuce has no calories, okay? Lettuce has no calories. She just wanted to be in the video. Look at her. Okay, I didn't get. You'll go get the camera. No, I'm thinking.
Is this where she hit her head?
Go ahead. This is not, you're not on the camera. You can try.
No, okay. Is this where she hit her head?
Actually, right over here somewhere on the wall. Yeah, she made it to there and it fell right here. We had somebody pass out in class. Not mine. Miss Nichols was being mean in class. But cellulose is very important to us for roughage in our diet. So we want to eat this because we can't digest it, and that keeps our, I'm an A&P teacher, sorry, but that keeps us with normal bowel movements, okay? Okay, then we're going to see there's a difference between plants and algae, and we're going to see how the zygote is produced and how they protect their embryo, kumbaya. Now, if you remember, we believe that this charophyte was the algae, remember the algae, the protozoan that the plants come from. So this is very similar, and we believe this is where the plants came from. It has the cellulose cell wall, plasma desmata, even a little placenta. Here's it. So we believe this was the first one. We believe these were the very first land plants, or this is the coleocates or what, like chara, whatever. Okay. And once again, nothing much to see here on that. Now, what are some things that plants are going to have to do? So this is a really good little part here. Adaptations they have to make to require them to live on land. Okay. Now, these algae that we talked about the other day, they did the reproduction. They had to have water. So the early land plants are still going to need water to have reproduction, which is kind of crazy. Okay, but they're going to have to make some processes. They have to evolve some things to prevent them from drying out. Desiccation is a process of something drying up, and so they're going to have a way to maintain moisture. Okay, we're going to see that they got to protect the sperm and egg, etc. And then we're going to see later on that the early land plants are going to use spores, but later on we're going to see the evolution of seed. Seed is a big deal. A seed is a baby plant in a protective capsule with enough food to live for maybe 200 or 300, maybe 1,000 years. Okay, and so when you plant your seeds, the baby's still alive in that seed, then it takes oxygen and water into it, and then it hatches out and shoots up that root and plant and the shoot to get photosynthesis, and it grows from that. So farmers plant seeds, right? That's what we do. But seeds were not the very first land plants are not going to have seeds. We're going to see that as an evolutionary advancement. Okay. And then one of the coolest things, so the seed then how it's dispersed and how it gets spread out is very cool. Okay, down here at the bottom, the water, obviously water was a plentiful water, lots of moisture, and it made it very easy for little sperm to swim to each other and to support and float the body part. So we're going to see the evolution of body parts, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so here is what we think the evolution of the plants are. Okay, so the very first land plant, here we are, this charophyte, which is an algae, right? Maybe common ancestor, right? So that was the algae that we think is closest to the land plants. We think these liverworts, hornworts, and mosses evolved from that, called the bryophytes. So the first land plants are going to be the bryophytes, and they appear back in the fossil record about what? 530 million years ago. Liverworts, hornworts, and mosses. Now these are very small. Okay, now look real quick. Some of these pictures are going to show y'all. You want to see, like that 50-foot tall tree. Now these are like little things like this big. So very small. These are very small plants. Okay. And then we see the evolution of, so that's the first group down here, the liverworts and hornworts. Then we see the evolution of, these are seedless. So we got seedless plants, the ferns and the lycophytes. And has everybody seen a fern? Mother, you got a fern, you've been to a wedding, all those little beautiful big green ferns, okay? They still don't have seeds, okay? They're seedless. But they do have vascular tissue, and vascular tissue is something we're going to talk about in just a minute. Let me go ahead and define that, because this is something that I kind of decided, it's in the books quite a bit, and you may not know what it is. But real quick thought here. And us, we're made out of 4 tissues. We're made out of epithelial, muscle, nerve, and connective tissue, animals. Plants are made out, and this is coming up in the chapter on plant structure, but just listen to me, it makes sense. Plants have 3 types. They have epidermal tissue, like our epidermis, covered outside, okay? Then they have what's called vascular tissue, okay? And vascular tissues are tubes, like arteries and veins, that carry things for them throughout their body, like our arteries and veins. There are 2 types. Xylem, which we're going to talk about, that carries water from the roots all the way up to the tree, by the way, here the leaves. So my toes are roots. So xylem carries water from the soil all the way up the tree. Everybody gets water they need, and then they evaporate the water in their leaves. So they actually pump it up to the leaves. So there's a flow of water up to the leaves. We're going to talk about that later. And then phloem are another set of tubes that run right beside the xylem tubes, and they carry the sugar, the products of photosynthesis, down the plant to feed everybody. So they have a circulatory system, kind of like our heart. They don't have a heart, okay, but they have tubes that pump water up the plant, so everybody gets water, and then food from the leaves all the way down the plant to the root. Where like carrots and potatoes store that sugar down there, and we eat the baked potato and the carrots or whatever later for food. So very kind of cool thing. Okay, just a quick thought. So in the evolution of plants, look what happens. No vascular tissue, so that's the big deal. The lycophytes, the ferns are the first ones to have xylem and phloem, right? The tubing, which by the way makes really good wood. So wood is xylem. So firewood is xylem, okay? And then God does another one after that. Then we see the evolution of seeds, okay? And seeds are super important, and that allows them to go anywhere on the land, because now you don't have to have sex to have a baby. In other words, they use pollen, and seeds are super protective babies, okay? And then the evolution next was of the flower. The guy, I'm not trying to be dirty or anything like that, but the whole thing is based on sex. But even the way they all group them is once again how they have sex. I'm going to blow your mind with that. What is the purpose of flowers? Anybody know? Besides to give to somebody on Valentine's Day and their birthday. Yes, very good. Thank you. So they are used to attract pollinators to come and get the pollen on them, so then they will go and eat nectar or get food or whatever on another plant and carry the seed for them. So flowers are all about getting pollinators to come in and help them have sex with another plant that they can't reach, instead of just throwing the pollen in the air. So it's actually one of the videos we showed, it's a personal thing, right? So the insects carry the pollen to the female part of another plant, and that's how, so the flowers are all about attracting pollinators in. Very good, thank you. So that's pretty cool, isn't it? And so that's the last big evolution, okay, and that's super cool. And so these flowering plants dominate the earth, the angiosperms. They're the main thing we eat, and all of our fruits and vegetables are that. The gymnosperm is our pine trees and hardwoods and evergreen trees, okay? And they have cones, but they don't have flowers. And so we see an evolution from a very small structure all the way up, okay? We'll come back to this pretty cool graph, and this is documented in the fossil record, okay? And another one's kind of cool that we'll mention here. We don't have a lot of real big ferns and lycophytes today. There are some ferns and lycophytes down in South America that are like our pine trees. They're 30, 40 feet tall. But there was a period back in the coniferous period of our evolution, 400 or 500 million years ago, there were trees as big as any trees ever, huge, gigantic redwood, lip-sized trees that were these ferns. They died, they became fossilized, and that's our coal, the fossil fuel coal. Okay? And we know that because we can see the xylem rings, we can see the rings, I've seen this on my farm. There's coal on my farm in Lee County, and you can see the rings, the xylem rings, which are classic plant rings. There's no doubt that was once a plant. So our fossil fuels are dead organic plants that have been fossilized, okay? And it will run out. We're not making any more of that. It takes 500 million years, 500 million years to make that or whatever. And petroleum is thought to be dead animals, okay? Got to know that. That's why one of the oil companies had the dinosaur, is their motto, because this dinosaur is fossilized dinosaur, okay? So we're running out. That's why there's a big deal right now about renewable energy and stuff like that. We'll talk about it in chapter on ecology, right? And so that's pretty cool. Okay, firewood is renewable, but coal and petroleum is not. Okay, so now that's a big trend we're going to see here now. Watch as we go forward. Here they are laid out and texturally wise, right? So you can see they lay them out here. The land plants, right? The liverworts first, and vascular means they have xylem phloem, right? And ferns, and then here are the gymnosperm, which are the cone-bearing. The word gymnosperm means they can see because the seeds are not in a fruit and they're not in a flower. And then angiosperms have fruit and flower. And so fruit is really cool. Fruit is the baby seeds in a fleshy material that's good to eat, or helps it in dispersal. Okay. The theory is, how do apple cores grow? Spread. Well, the horse eats an apple and takes it over 2 later and plants an apple seed somewhere 50 miles down the road. So a lot of the seeds are go through digestive tract, and that's part of their germination. But that's basically what we just looked at, so I'm going to go forward. Okay, so to adopt the land, we're going to have figure out a way to conserve water. And so the leaves have a waxy cuticle. Y'all all seen that. That's the waxy. If you pull out that little evergreen out of that shrub, it's got a wax, feels like wax. Like a lot of people wax their cars, and that protects the coat, right, of the paint. So God makes wax on this to cover them up and protect them. Okay, and the plants are going to have to let air out in and out. They have to actually release oxygen and take in carbon dioxide. So under the leaves of most of our plants, they have little holes in the bottom of the leaves called stomata. Okay, and we actually do a lab, and we'll look at the leaves. You'll see this on the bottom of your most of your angiosperms, which are the big, beautiful leafy ones, right? You will look at the bottom of the leaf, and there's holes in it, and they can open and close that. They don't breathe. They don't breathe like we do, but they do need to let oxygen out. But they make oxygen, right? And they use that to do cellular respiration, but they got to bring in CO2. So if we ever go touch a farm of another planet like Mars or whatever, we'll take plants to make oxygen for us. So we can stay alive with plants. We can eat them and they make oxygen for us, and then we can feed them. We can water and feed them back and then it's a circle of life. It's really cool. Okay, bodies of the land plants are composed mostly of three-dimensional tissues. We already mentioned that. The three tissues are what? Epithermal, ground tissue, and vascular tissue. Now, ground tissue is kind of a weird thing. That's just a generic plant cell. And there's three types of these ground tissues. That's just like your average Joe cell. Okay? But that vascular tissue, is a big deal. And I'll repeat that 100 times. So we got a whole chapter coming up about plant structure. So don't freak out. But as you read this, it might not hurt if you knew that. Okay, and then of course they had to develop some protections from UV light, and that's where they would get the thickness of the plant, et cetera, et cetera. There's the cuticle, there's the stomata, so there it is, that's the little hole. Okay, now we're going to talk about this alteration generation. Okay, and this is what's really kind of a hard one for me to explain, and it kind of threw me off until I saw it, until I kind of caught on to it. Okay, so here's the deal. I may have mentioned this in another lecture, but let's think about it. We know that our body, you're made up of 100 billion cells, 100 trillion cells. All of your cells are diploid. You have two chromosomes, one from mom, one from dad. So we have a diploidic life cycle that's dominant. That's us. That's our body. Well, in plants, that's not always the case. Some plants, the dominant life cycle is going to be the gametophyte, the structures that are one chromosome. Now, what's the only one chromosome structure we make? Sperm and eggs. So your gametophytes are ovaries. It would be the ovary testes produce sperm and egg. And that's attached to us, and it's not a big part of our body, right? It's attached to us. It's really small compared to our whole body. But what we're going to see is that the first land plants, what you see is ovary and testicle. Now, it's not called that, it's gametophyte. But it's their reproductive structure. Okay? You with me? And we're going to see an evolution to a dominant diploid structure, which we call the diploid structure in plants, the sporophyte. So we would be the sporophyte for the plant. Big, diploid structure. The pine tree, the apple tree, the cotton plant, the corn plant, all of that is the sporophyte diploid structure. Okay? Their haploid structures are small. The cones, the pine cones are the gametophytes for the pine trees, and the flower is the gametophyte for the angiosperm, the flower. Now, what happens to flowers, by the way? They fall off, right? They catch the sperm by pollinators or whatever, then they make the fruit ripens, right? And then it falls off or gets windblown or whatever, then the genital falls off, and they grow another one next cycle. That's pretty wild, right? Okay, is everybody with me? Now ours don't fall off, okay? Ours stay, okay? That's very important to keep that in mind, okay? But they drop their gametophytes. You with me? It's kind of weird. So their alteration generation is, going to be a little different. They have a dominant sporophyte in the tree, but the gametophyte is very small and lived, and it falls off. Now, let me go ahead and give you one that's going to blow your mind. This is really the best one. The best alteration generation is the fern. Now, I'm not going to flip over to it because it was confused y'all if we flip 80 slides forward, right? But it's coming up. But what if I told you this? If I heard this in high school, I probably took mine in undergrad. Their sporophyte produces a gametophyte, a haploid structure that is released as a spore off their body. It'd be like me dropping a spore up on my arm. It lands in water and grows the male and female reproductive organs. Ovary testicle for us, but it's a gametophyte, so it's the gametophytes for them. And then it produces a sperm that has to have water and a tail, and it swims over to another female reproductive structure and fertilizes, and that's the only way babies are made in nature. Did I hear what I said? An entity that's not part of the main fern drops off, goes over there, makes male and female reproductive structures, and the fern swims to another one near it and fertilizes, and then the fern grows out of that. That's alteration generation, right? Two different unattached. Ours are attached. Most of the plants, they're attached to them. That one ain't even attached. First time I saw that in college was April 1, like 30 years ago, and I stood up and called the teacher and said, this is April Fool's joke, right?
I like to say.
I thought it was, I swear I walked out of class thinking, he didn't say it. Come on. Then I go read the book, and I said, nobody told me that. I was 21.
That's right.
That's crazy, isn't it? And I hate to do this, but I have to put it in context of us, right? So this would be like one of you girls just going, what, I think I have a baby. You go over left in the corner, come back 2 weeks later, it's having sex with itself, and then come back 6 weeks later and pick up your little baby at 9 months. Maybe like a watermelon, you go check it. Is it ready? You throw a watermelon. And 9 months later, little Jimmy's born, okay? And if you wanted to have, that would be asexual reproduction. And by the way, it can fertilize itself. But if you wanted the husband, then he'd lay a pod next to it and it would do whatever, and the sperm would swim over and fertilize the egg. That's what it would be. That is what's happening in ferns. Now somebody asked me this one time. So how do they grow ferns at Mama Ball? Yeah, blew my mind. How do they grow ferns at the nursery? Where nursery is places to grow plants and stuff. I said, that seems kind of weird. And I said, no, they don't do that. The way you would do it, you just have to have a fern sitting in like little wading pools, right? Because you had to have one to have sex. What they do is cut a limb off and grow a new one, asexual reproduction. And I actually took a fern of my wife one time and came up when I was teaching this biology in summer, because I made them look at a real fern, and then I left it in the lab. Now this is like June. And in July, my wife starts going, where's my fern? Where's my fern? I'm like, oh, it's just still, I'll bring it tomorrow. Have you been watering it? And I lied, yeah. They didn't want to fight, don't need to fight. So the next day, it's July 16th, it's like 800 degrees. And I remember right when I'm going home for lunch, I better go get that fern. So I go get the fern, put it in my back seat. It's 800 degrees in my car, and I forget something in my office. I run back, and then I went like, "Oh my God!" I just put that fern in that darn in the incubator oven. When I came back, y'all, every leaf had fallen out but one little twig. I mean, I literally had to get the vacuum cleaner to get all the leaves out of my car. And my wife was able to nurse that back. We reseeded that and so on, and grew the fern back. But I literally killed that fern. Okay, but that's asexual reproduction. But that's a great example of operation generation, right? And the little structure is called a prothallus. So it has a name for its gametophyte that actually is not attached to the sporophyte. So to me, that's just the best example of all of what? True alteration, generation, two different life cycles. So usually they're attached, okay? And the very first plants, we're going to talk about those bronchites. This is going to blow my mind. She's going to love this. But how many of y'all been to Delta? We've seen the movies about the moths hanging out of the tree. I'm going to ruin it for y'all. That's all gametophyte. So mosses, what you see is the haploid gametophyte, sperm, egg producing structure, gonads, okay? And only during the right time of year they make a diploid body part. So it flips in the early plants. The early plants have a dominant sporophyte, haploid generation, and a very small sporophyte. And so we see an evolution all the way up to the pine trees. And actually there it is. This is a great picture. So the very first plants we're going to see the mosses, they have a green structure. That's what you see all the time. Look under your trailer if you live in a trailer. No judgment here. But these like to grow in the shade where it's wet. And so that's the gametophyte. And then the spring, they have the sporophyte, the sporangium grows up and baby spores are released. Okay. So what you see is gametophyte, and this is attached to the gametophyte, the diploid structure. Then we see the ferns, and there's that prothallus that makes the male and female part that's not even attached to the fern. Okay. And then we see the gymnosperms, right? This is pine trees, and look how big the sporophyte is. And now we have little bitty gametophytes called pollen and eggs, right, in the cones. To the flowers are the gametophyte and sperm. And notice the sperm, pollen gets smaller and the egg gets smaller. So we see a flip. You have huge gametophytes on the first land plants, mosses, and the last one to evolve, the angiosperms, have very, very small gametophytes. So one of my questions is, what trends do we see in the reproductive strategies of these plants, right? So let's look at it again. So the first land plants are going to have what? A dominant gametophyte with an attached sporophyte or diploid structure. So we got these guys that have two separate living entities here that ain't even attached. And these little spores are produced by these little structures on the leaf that's released, and that grows into it. And look, that's the male part, that's the female side. So, and then they can swim in water and fertilize each other. So we get this dominant sporophyte pine trees with little propellers in the pollen to catch the wind to land on another cone, and then the seeds have propellers too, or have little wings to fly in the wind, like boomerangs. Till we get the evolution of fruit to protect the baby, and flowers to, as you correctly said, to bring in pollinators. And we have a huge sporophyte and very small gametophytes. It's a lot. Okay. But is that kind of cool? So once we get out this basic stuff, we're just going to do a little tour of the plants and right here. Okay. Now, as we go through this tour of the plants, take a look. Question 2, put the flower group in the order they evolved. Well, my God, that's easy to do, right? I just told y'all that's just quick. You got to another order of these, and they're out of order in this. Okay. Describe the evolutionary history of reproduction in the plant kingdom. Well, let's do it one more time. Here's your history, right? We start out with what? a dominant gametophyte, and these guys have to have water to have babies. So we have true alteration of generation with a separate entity that ain't even attached to the sporophyte. And it also has to have water for sex. Then we get pollen, which eliminates the need of water, and that's why pine trees can live anywhere in the evergreens, right? They use pollen that's windblown to land in the female cone, and then we have the babies released like 3 years later. They become seeds that are released. It takes like 3 or 4 years for a pine tree to have sex and have babies. Okay, pretty long gestation period there. Okay, then we get the evolution of fruit and flower in the angiosperms, and they dominate the world. We'll see the million, probably 500 million species. There's lots of these, very, still ain't named them all. But we go from so quick step is we go from a dominant gametophyte to a dominant what? Sporophyte, and we lose the need for water to have sex. We lose the sperm swimming in water. We evolve pollen, and then we evolve pollinators in fruit, and fruit protects the baby embryo as it develops. And they're really good to eat. Right? What do you think? So we got to answer that. Okay, now describe the changes observed in plant alteration generation. So now I want you maybe to go back and show that picture before, right? And talk about how plants have both a diploid part called the sporophyte and a haploid part. And in the case of the fern, they're not even attached to each other, right? They're separate entities. But in most cases, in the early ones in the moss, we had a dominant haploid structure. But once we get past the ferns, we have a dominant sporophyte, which I think this picture really answered that too, doesn't it? So this is a really good picture. So if you're having trouble writing those out, and I would just go write these out and memorize them, because you're going to get one of them on the file, on midterm, right? I'm going to definitely ask you 2 or 3. Okay, now, number 5, where does coal come from? I've already told that, but it's actually in a good commentary on page 421. And then look, because ferns are so weird, I made you describe how ferns naturally reproduce. I already told you that, but I'll show it to you in a picture in a second. Where corn come from, that's a really cool commentary that's come up in the PowerPoint also. And as we go through these groups, and I did put these, they're still that order. They're in opposite order, I believe. They are. No, they're in random order. Remember, biophytes came first, which is a moss and the lycophyte, then the angiosperms and ferns. Well, what do each of these groups do for us? Once again, I hope y'all don't mind. I know some of y'all may end up being botanists, and I love y'all, but I'm sorry, I'm all about me, myself, and I, right? Human beings, we're number one, right? So what do these do for us, right? As we go through this, I think that's a pretty good application for us to just know what they do for mankind, or womankind. And last but not least, I want you to put in this chapter, draw and label a flower. So everybody will have that on the midterm. Okay, that's on everybody's test. And I'm going to then grade them because I have a minor in art. Oh, yes, that's a lie. But I'm going to give bonus points for the most beautiful flower. Okay, because I think we should reward those of us that are artistically gifted like me. And y'all see me, I'll draw some, and y'all will find that as a joke. It's an inside joke. I have no artistic ability. And then I'm going to give one person, maybe or two from each class, and then the person who draws the most pathetic flower that is yet correctly drawn, that has no artistic ability, matter of fact, are artistically challenged, I'm going to give them a bonus, special bonus for the most pathetically drawn, correctly drawn flower. Okay, so you may go after either one of those at your own wheel. Okay, have you will play that. Okay, but we'll have a little bonus point from that. Now, what time we got? We got about 13 minutes to fly through these, so we're now going to do our quick tour of the plants. Okay, but I think we've answered most of the questions. I already told you where they were, so y'all can kind of relax a little bit and let's dive through it. All right, first group, bryophytes. So these are the what? Non-vascular plants, meaning they don't have what? Those xylem and phloem tubes, which is going to come up in the chapter coming up next about plant structure. So when you read that, it'll make more sense, okay? So read these chapters ahead of time. These are the first plants to colonize land. They specialize in means of transporting water and organic nutrients, right? They do not have true roots or stems or leaves. Okay, they had a dominant gametophyte. It produced an egg in it, what's called an archegonium, and a flagellum sperm in its antheridium. The sperm swim to the egg and a film of water to fertilize the egg. Where have we seen a sperm swim into an egg somewhere before? Possibly humans, okay, and a lot of animals. Okay, so I thought, hey, I don't look like you do not look like a fern, right? But they come, or a moss. But isn't it kind of weird? Did y'all know that some of the plants have sperm to swim to an egg? I did not until I took this class. Okay, here's some of the guys, and we got pictures coming up. Liverworts, okay, flattened leaves, blah, 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 blah. Nothing much here. They can do sexual, asexual reproduction. Let's get a picture of one. And hornworts also in the same group. Some of these some of these have symbiotic relationships with cyanobacteria, so they're big about that. Here, let's take a picture of one. Come on, and mosses. I love moss, right? Peat moss, granite moss. They're really cool, right? Here we go. So here is what we got here. Liverworts here. So look, and by the way, I always thought about drawing a guy right here. Like this is 30-foot, 60-foot tree. These are really small, okay? And I tell you where you see these. Like if you go to Walmart in the parking lot, and there's a hole in the concrete, there's little things going through it. They can grow in really harsh environments. So they like to grow in the cracks of concrete and stuff. That's where you see these guys, okay? And then of course y'all know moss. Here's another one. There's I think the hornwort. Okay, now y'all everybody know what I mean when I talk about moss. Hanging out of the trees or whatever. But what you may not have known is that is what you're seeing is that nice green moss is actually the haploid structure. And there is a male and female moss, okay? You didn't know this, right? So the male one has the antheridium that makes the sperm that's going to swim over to another one, and the female has the archegonium which receives the sperm. So the sperm swims over through water, lands at the female one. So these do not grow in the desert. They got to have moisture. And then look, fertilization occurs, and they grow. The sporophyte grows out of the female gametophyte, and then it releases spores that then go through the air, land, do meiosis, and go into both male and female gametophytes. So only at the right time of year, and we will usually go order some of these. You'll see. Hopefully, we'll have some. You'll see them usually in the spring. The green moss has this little brown stalk come up with a sporangium that releases the spores that go into the air that make baby gametophytes. I actually about 10 years, 15 years ago, my nephews were still young when we took them hunting. So we bought a place over in Benton County. My dad really wanted to, we were from Lee County, Tupelo, and he always wanted every year. Anybody Benton County? Okay, good. Okay, I love Benton County. It's rural, right? It's kind of rural, right? And that's kind of where I'm from. But that's like the deer mecca of North Mississippi, right? Everybody wants to go deer hunting in Benton County. So everybody in Tupelo wish they had land in Benton County. So we bought 40 acres over there, and we actually get it paid off in December. So next Christmas, we're going to burn the note, we'll have it paid off. But it's beautiful, and there's some woods that haven't been cut probably in 100 years, so I can go out and I have natural springs on the land, and I can see these little guys. I actually go over there to pictures of them. So the mosses are year-round, beautiful little green things, but they're in a really shaded area, little ditch banks and stuff, right? Pretty cool. And then we usually bring some from somebody goes up the woods somewhere and bring them back for lab, or we'll order some. But that's their life cycle, right? The only time the sporophyte is present is like in the spring. Okay, so look at, maybe if you got an old barn in the woods somewhere, look around the edge of the shade where it's wet, and you'll see these guys. So they're, they can be kind of small and sometimes hanging out trees. Okay. Okay, and this is a commentary. We'll kind of skip on this, right? This is talking about, this is actually the pool where they found some bryophytes after a glacier had melted. Because look, guys, I don't want to get in politics, but I don't care if he's president or not. I don't think it's going to affect us that much, but I can't stand it when people are stupid and say things like, it's getting warmer. Okay, it's getting warmer, it's a fact, okay? Now, is it nature changing? Yeah, but it looks like the smartest people on earth, the scientists, are saying we're having something to do with it. And we are burning a lot of fossil fuels, right? And we are probably contributing. We know we're contributing to the greenhouse effect, and that's caused us to warm up a little bit. The top, since we developed thermometers, 300 years ago, or whatever, the hottest, 10 years have been in the last 20 years, okay? And we're like on a 5-year hot streak, okay? And we need to see if we can't help fix that, right? Or we're going to be looking at, Orlando, Disney World is going to be oceanside real soon, right? And New Orleans is going to have to move. And I actually would have voted, I know it's not fair, but when Katrina hit New Orleans, I pushed people to say, let's just close it down and move to Baton Rouge. You call it New Orleans. New Orleans. So that'd be fine. Right? Because it's underwater, right? New Orleans is underwater, people. It's below sea level, okay? And we have pumps and stuff to keep it from flood. I mean, it's kind of like, don't build your house underwater. It's not gonna work, okay? Go into one of my BBS Bible songs, build a house. Okay. Anyway, but this is kind of cool. Look, they have found these bryophytes that go back 1,400 years old that were hatched out. So they were able to grow them in the laboratory. Pretty cool. Y'all can read it. I'll leave it alone. Here it is. There's the receding glacier. And here's some that they grew from the spores that they found in. So we were able to rehatch these. Okay. Another thing that scares me is as these things melt, there's gonna be some diseases, some bacteria, right, and fungi that we haven't dealt with. It's gonna probably kill a bunch of people before it's done. Okay, so I suspect some more plagues coming out of some of this prison ice. Is anybody else? I'm a big national park person. I've been to most of them in the United States, and before I die, I'm doing all of them. I'm doing all of them, all the national parks. Glacier National Park named because it has glaciers and got about 5 of them. Okay, so if you're gonna go to glaciers, you need to kind of do that in the next 30 years, okay, 15, 20 years. Because they're receding and we're seeing that. Okay. But you can drive up into Canada. We did when we went to glacier and rode out on the glacier and drunk water that just unfroze for the first time in probably a billion years, so 100 million years. Okay, so here's we already covered that. So vascular tissue is now going to evolve in the next group of plants, right? The ferns are the first ones to have this. And xylem carries water up the plant, phloem carries the products of photosynthesis down the plant, and then the lichens in there have very strong cell walls, and that's cellulose that we can't break down. And so the next group is going to be these seedless vascular plants. But now that you know what vascular means, it makes more sense, doesn't it? So these guys house a structure that allows them to get tall. That's how trees can grow up. And these tubing, these xylem and phloem vascular parts carry the products of photosynthesis down the plant and xylem up. Okay, but they're still going to use spores, win more, and they're going to need water to fertilize too. Okay, and so here's a fossil of one of these other ones, right? Very old sporangium, so we know they've been around a while. These include lycophytes. There he is, a little bitty thing like that. Same thing here. Some of these are 35. These got to be 35 meters. That's 300 feet tall. 100 feet tall in the Carnivorous period that became fern. But the only ones still alive are very small. I actually had a student who joined my class one time, which is a shocker. And she went to the East Coast, Maine, and sent me a picture in the mail. This is back before email stuff. She sent me a picture. But I mentioned whisk ferns as another one coming up that they make a soup out of. Okay, so it wasn't business. It was like whisk fern head soup. And she took a picture on the other cafe and sent it to me like, you went mine. It sucked too. I tried it. I can't imagine a fern. I just can't imagine a soup made out of fern would be really good. Right? Okay, it wasn't, but she tried it in on her other class. Okay, but the broadleaves allow them to do photosynthesis, right? So that's an evolution. Okay, horsetails, only 25 species of these left. These are very small little things living in cracks of concrete, but they have vascular tissue. There it is. The whisk fern is one of them. We talked about nothing much here. And then 11,000 species of ferns. And let's look at this life cycle. And there's some of these in South America that can be as big as our pine trees. Okay, so they have the diploid sporophyte in these leaves. Okay, now on the bottom of the leaf, they have these little structures. How many of y'all seen the little red thing on the bottom of a fern leaf? Check it out. That's called the sorus, and that's its reproductive structure. Now, I had an aunt who was a clean freak, and she took tweezers and basically castrated her fern. She thought it was some kind of blight or some kind of fungus, and I'm like, I gotta clean this thing. Hey, don't do that. Okay, so they do produce spores, right? And that spore is what comes to prothallus. Okay, so take a look. So here's our life cycle. Look. Craziest thing I've ever seen. So the sporangiums under here release spores that land in water and grow into this prothallus that's about the size of your fingernail. Look, one end has archegonium that makes eggs, other end has anthracidium that makes the sperm. Then they swim, they can fertilize themselves, or they swim to another one, and the baby fern grows out of the prothallus. Is that not the craziest thing you've ever seen? I mean, that's just crazy to me. Okay, we still got a couple. Let's see if we get a little bit more covered here. Okay, so ferns, blah, blah, blah. Some are edible, okay? Some of them are medicines are made from them, right? So pretty cool. Decorative, got to have them for a wedding, right? And then the next evolution was the seeded plants. And we have two groups, right? Gymnosperms and angiosperms, okay? And we're going to see the evolution of pollen. Pollen is the male gametophyte that the wind can blow to the female. So I find it's pretty cool that even the flowering plants here, the first ones, the angiosperms, gymnosperm, pine cones, it is the male that has to do the swimming tube. And this weird because that's what happens in our reproduction, right? The male does all the work, right? It swims over to the, and then the mother swells up and has the baby. Well, guess what? Fruit is ripening, eggs and fruit. So the fruit swells up too, right? So we get a swelling of the fruit. Apple is the fruit. Here is the bristlecone trees in California, the oldest trees on earth. Actually, that's a Jupiter tree, but there is the bristlecone is the oldest on earth, and of course the sequoia is the biggest above ground or living organisms on Earth, and then the redwoods are the tallest on Earth. Okay, let's look at the gymnosperm. These include conifers, ginkgos. Let's do the life cycle real quick. And maybe try to wrap it up. There is a male and female cone. You may not know that. There is a cone that makes the pollen. This is a little cone. Looks like a cigarette in a pine tree. And then the big cone is the female cone. So the wind blows the pollen to the female cone. And here's the reproductive cycle of this. I'm just going to try to wrap it up real quick. Give me just a minute. So the pollen does all that. There's your light. Look, the pollen of pine trees look like Mickey Mouse hats too. So we'll see those in the lab. So I always do MICKY, Mickey Mouse Club. Their pollen always look like a Mickey Mouse hat. Pretty cool. And y'all can read about, obviously I got two words here, wood, okay, and housing, okay? So very big in medicines, of course, but you can look that up. Okay, there's a ginkgo plant, right, that people like. Okay, moving on. And then we go to the angiosperms, or the flowering plants. And there are two groups, monocots and dicots, and we'll talk about this later, but the seed has two leaves. It's a dicot. If it has one leaf, it's a monocot, and so they have one cotyledon, okay? And here are the flower parts, and we'll just make you label, that's a good one to draw, with the male parts. This is the female part. Over there, the stamen is the male part, and the carpel is the female part. Just draw that, okay? And here's the life cycle of it. So the male anthers make pollen, pollinators or wind, land them on the female, they grow down, fertilize the egg, they get a double fertilization. We fertilize the egg and the endosperm, which is the food for the baby, and then the seed is formed. And look at the seed. Baby embryo with food in the sperm and a protective coat. We have taken seeds out of the pyramids and regerminated it. So it's still active. A lot of y'all may have families that do gardens, and you put the seeds back in the freezer and get them out next year and use them for several years. So seeds last a while. Okay, isn't that kind of cool? Now, one thought on this is that in that fruit, which is going to swell in the ovary, how many of y'all, let's do one fruit, we'll get out here, corn on top. Corn is a fruit. When you pull it, the silks are the pollen tube that grew down to fertilize the egg. And if you count the pollen tube, the silks, they equal the number of seeds. Is that cool? All right, and I think y'all can figure the rest of it out here. I think we can stop there, okay? I think that's actually the end of it. So let's call it a wrap on that, and then y'all get out here. It's time to go. All right, bye. Let me end this thing. See y'all, guys.